Hi, it's Chris, the guitar amp tech from Sydney, Australia here. Question: what do you get when you mix a 3x10 Fender Bandmaster with a Fender brown face reverb unit, the standalone one, the 6G15? It's not obvious. Yes, Mr. Smartass? I'd be thinking it's a Fender Super Reverb. No, it's not a Fender Super Reverb. Yes, Harley. Oh, I know, Dad. It's a Fender VibroKing. Yes, Harley, a Fender custom shop VibroKing. I believe it was designed by Bruce Zinke. It came out in 1993. I didn't hear one for a few years, but I finally got to hear three at the same time when Pete Townshend rocked my world with The Who in 2004. Pete's always had a brilliant sound, whether it was Marshall or High Watt, and the VibroKings did not diminish that legend at all. The VibroKing is very different to most other Fender amps, and we'll have a look at the schematic to gain a better appreciation of this new Fender classic. If this sounds like something that will make your toes curl, go and grab a coffee, look over my shoulder, and let's get stuck in. Now, before we start with a dissection of the VibroKing, let's have a quick word about reverb. If we look at the famous AB763 schematic, like we'd see on a Super Reverb, we can see that there is the all-important first gain stage, which drags the signal up from the 200 millivolts coming out of my guitar. From there, it goes into a tone stack and then a volume control, and onto another gain stage to recover from the lossy tone stack. After this, your sound will finally hit a 12A-T7 Reverb Driver. Fender uses a 12A-T7 and then joins the plates together to maximize the current going to the Reverb Transformer. A 12A-T7 has about triple the current that a 12A-X7 does. Interestingly, the VibroKing has a different take on it. Before the black panel era of 1964, there was no built-in reverb, so Fender created an external standalone reverb tank in the brown face livery. It was called the 6G15 schematically. I don't remember what the name was, might have been just Fender Reverb Tank. But it's important that you understand that the reverb was added to your sound before it entered the amp, just like a reverb pedal would today. And this is how the VibroKing works. The very first thing your sound hits after that first preamp stage is the reverb circuit. And just like the original brown face unit, it has a mix, a tone, and a dwell. Yes, Harley. Oh, Dad, I understand the tone and the mix, but what does dwell do? It's not on any other Fender amp. Very observant, Harley. The dwell adjusts how hard your signal will hit that reverb driver tube. And the reverb tube itself is different. In the early ones, it was an L84. Then in the later versions, it was a 6V6. And this can hit the tube very hard, that driver tube, with that dwell control. So hard that it can get the spring splashing and crashing. Or it can just gently kiss that tube and just give a little bit of ambience. The mix control will then adjust how much of that reverb, that wet reverb sound gets mixed in with your dry sound. Anyway, enough of the blah blah. Let's get started with the real VibroKing. How cool is this blonde Tolex with the oxblood grill cloth, vintage logo? Yeah, we would have seen that logo in you know, that brown face here, 1960 to 63. Let's have a look at the side. Both sides are in excellent condition with the tilt back legs to get the sound coming up to you rather than whacking the back of your legs. I believe there was a 2x12 extension box, which I'm pretty sure I remember Pete using at that Who concert. It has these rather annoying cages around the tube, so you can't change a tube that's failed in the middle of a show without having to pull all this off. So we'll pull all this off. Notice the 3 10-inch Jensens. They're reissues, but these I really did like. I believe these are the same that were in my 410 Bassman reissue from around about 1990, 91, I think mine was. And I think those speakers sounded pretty darn good, I got to say. Anyway, let's pull this off. So here we have our 2 6L6 power tubes. We'll see how this is, it's claiming to get 60 watts out of this. We'll have a look and see how it can achieve this with 2 6L6s. It's possible, but we'll check it out. This is the thing that's got me a bit perplexed. This is the Reverb Driver tube. What do you notice about it? Yeah, it's another 6L6. It was originally an EL84, but they just weren't hacking it. And then I know they went to a 6V6. What do we got in the preamp tubes? JJ. JJ. Tungsol. All of these are 12A X7s. Another JJ here. Ooh. I can tell that one's very rattly. I don't know if you can hear that. Nice, nice, nice. That's got a bit of a ping in it already, so I suspect that one's going to be microphonic before I've even turned it on. But definitely no good on the phase inverter there. All right, let's pull the chassis out. Wow, I've got to say, check out the size of the power transformer. Oh my God, it is huge. Now, before I take the cabinet down, let's just have a look at this date code here. So we've got the speaker model, which is a P10R, 8 ohm. So we've got 3 8 ohms in parallel. It'll be a bit under 3, I'm going to guess and say about 2.8 ohm. Looking at DC resistance, that'll be a little bit less than 2.8, maybe 2.6 ohm. If this is working properly, 2.45. Okay, so the speakers sound like they're the right impedance. Now we've got the date code here. 220 tells us that it's Jensen, we know that from the badge as well. And then it's got 0608. This is going to be 2006, the 8th week of 2006. The speakers were made. So I'd be thinking this is an early 2006 model. But even so, this tube driver, which is, it's definitely a 6L6, that's just not right. Look at the tube chart on the inside of the cabinet. And it quite clearly says 6V6. I'm concerned about this, and I'll tell you why. In the fault report, he said, check the speakers, which I will do, I've only checked the impedances right. No reverb, and it sounds like shit. It's the no reverb bit that I'm getting a bit concerned about, because that's one of the key things about this amp. So I'll look up my little manual. So for an EL84, the original design thing, I'm not sure if they changed the reverb transformer or not between the two. We might look at that. 65 milliamps is the maximum current for an EL84. Then for a 6V6 is low 50s, like 52 milliamps. But now let's look at what a 6L6 does. Maximum signal plate current can go up to as high as 79 milliamps. So we've got considerably more current going through this than a 6V6 or an EL84. Is it possible that being turned on for a long time we have overheated the reverb transformer, perhaps cooked it? It's possible. I think we need to check that out. First thing we're going to do is put in a 6V6 and see if that gives us any joy. If still no joy, we're going to test that transformer out. So there it says Fender, but here the EIA code 606 Schumacher, so they've gone back to the original manufacturer from their glory days. 06, so 2006, 31. So it's now looking at being later in 2006. And let's have a look. Also, I'm not sure what that is. Oh, that's why I'm not sure what that is. But the choke is a Tai Chang. Thinking that's from Texas. No, it's not. This one's Schumacher and also Schumacher. All right, let's have a look and see what lies under here. We've taken bets for what capacitors we're going to have if they haven't been replaced. I bet you they'll be the dreaded IC caps. Yes, they are. Wow, look at that. It's got this huge bus bar here. Oh no, someone has been in here and replaced some of the ICs with F&Ts. I think I'll take this out before I forget about it. That's the 6L6 that's driving the reverb transformer, which would be that little fella there. So we're hoping that that hasn't been cooked, so we might just test that for continuity. Notice that these are 4-wire probes, much more accurate than just 2-wire probes, because they take into account the resistance and the inductance and the capacitance of the actual cables themselves. So when you're measuring things to this level of accuracy, you want to eliminate all possible sources of error. Okay, 300 volts, 220 microfarad. 220, we want to see around about half an ohm. And this is why it's important to measure ESR, because capacitance-wise, it's measuring 243, which is in spec, but it's double the ESR. The ESR is 0.985, exactly double. Let's check this one. So this one, 231 microfarad, that's fine. 0.275 ESR. So that one, no good. This one's fine. But will I just change one? No. In this case, we're going to have to change both. $100 microfarad at 350. 350, 100, 350. I want to see less than 1 ohm. And This is measuring 111, capacitance okay, 4.43. So those three have got to change. I'm pretty sure these are going to be okay. What have we got? 47 at 500. 47 at 500. We want to see less than 2. As we thought, that one's okay. All right, I'm going to leave the 3 F and T's in, but we will change these. Let's have a quick look at the schematic to see how different it is to normal Fender amps. So here's our input, thankfully, only one channel. What do most of us use? We mostly use one channel. We either use one, normal, or vibrato, or bass and normal. We normally just use one channel. So our signal comes in here into our first 12AX7 gain stage, and this is what just brings it up from 100 to 300 millivolts, I say 200, and brings it up to a usable voltage. From here, it's going to go into our second gain stage, but this is directly feeding the Reverb Driver. Here's our dwell, and as you can see, this is going to control how hard we hit that 6V6, which in turn will control how much current we draw through the Reverb Transformer. I am suspecting we've got a problem here because this had a 6L6, which is a much higher current draw, as you know. I mean, a 6L6 amp is way louder than a 6V6 amp. I'm hoping that this wrongly placed tube hasn't blown this transformer. And from there it goes into the reverb pan. Potentially we could have damaged the reverb pan, less likely, but potentially. Then it goes into this recovery stage, and from there it's going to go into a tone, where we're going to, it's just a dumping of the high frequencies to earth there. And then here we're going to mix the reverb with the dry signal. Interesting, we're going to have to look out for this. It then goes to the send jack and off to our effects loop. If there is nothing plugged into that, then it's going to come back into the return jack. So we see this being a potential issue on Marshalls and that Randall Smith amp comes into there. So this has to be very clean. Then it comes into this next gain stage, our tone stack. As we can see, it's a fair way down the line. And they were a fair way down the line in like the Tweed era amps. And I think people complained to Leo that the tone controls weren't so effective. So what Leo did, and I think the brown face, the tone stack moved from there to there. So directly after that first gain stage. And when your tone controls are right up the front, they're much more effective than when they're tucked back behind a few gain stages. We'll pull this out, and that will enable us to do a check on the primary side of the Reverb Transformer. We have no reverb tank attached at the moment, so that means we'll be able to do a DC continuity check there. So what are we looking for? I mean, I think theoretically this is like 8 ohm output, and I can't remember what the input impedance is. I think a couple of hundred, 2200 or something, I can't remember, ohms of input resistance. But what in DC world, we'll be looking at something like roughly 1 ohm, roughly 1K. If we're seeing anything 0 or anything open circuit, we'll know that that's gone. All right, this is where our Reverb Transformer has come out, this one here. Green and black is our secondary of the Reverb Driver, and we're expecting that to be very low. reading 1 ohm. I'm going to call the secondary of the reverb transformer just fine. Now the primary, I'm expecting to be somewhere around 1K. Red is here. And blue, it's going to be on our tube. There it is. This I'd expect to be around about 1K. And it's reading 16 mega. All right, so sadly our suspicion that the reverb transformer is cooked is correct. And this is what? These are the few days between Christmas and New Year right now. So I reckon every supplier will probably be shut. Okay, this one's looking a bit odd. Ugh, God. Can you see the discoloration in that resistor? It's copped a fair whack of heat. I think that's meant to be 470, but it could be anything. Yeah, 470. You couldn't tell that that's a yellow. It should be yellow, purple, brown. Good luck on that one. Definitely copped a whack of heat. Let's see if it's still going. Okay, it's still reading okay, but I think as a precaution, yeah, that one's reading okay as well. I think as a precaution, because they've obviously copped such a wallop of heat, I'm going to replace both of those screen grid resistors. Still with 470. You could probably go higher, but I'm going to leave it at 470. But I will increase the wattage. Oh yeah, well, I haven't applied power to this thing yet, but that's our optocoupler, also known as the roach, for our tremolo. And as you can see, that's ideally enclosed in full blackness. As you can see, it's pulled back a bit, and because this is an optocoupler, the way it works is the neon will flash as determined by the oscillator. It will illuminate a light-dependent resistor, and that will then cause the variation in our volume. But when you have so much of that neon exposed, at the very least, I would think the tremolo is going to be weak. Now, keep in mind that this chassis will be in an enclosure, so it's not going to be as drastic as it looks to the eye. I have them in stock, so this IC branding persists of our capacitors. I will check these cathode bypass caps, make sure they're all fine. Now, when I was talking to the owner, he said that the tone pots had little effect. I will check that, but remember what I said, that the further away from the input jack the tone stack is, the less effect we will hear. But we will check them. I always take what an owner says with a lot of seriousness. Okay, this I like. This is well done, Fender. See, you see on some, I'll say lesser amps, these ground points on the pots are often just soldered back to the pot covers, which means we're then depending on the pot cover to make good contact with the pot shaft, to make good contact with the nuts and the chassis itself, to make sure there's electrical contact. Here they are connecting those ground points directly to this bus, which then comes back to this point back here. Bus goes to that point there. This custom shop legend, which could be bullshit. In this case, I think is genuine. Bit disappointing about seeing these here, because these will leak. It's just a matter of when. What's this yellow wire? It's coming up as the screen supply for the reverb. So we also have to check that we're getting our screen supply there, because if it's 0, that tube ain't going to work. And where did we just see it there? So yeah, we need to check that that filtering capacitor is working, that we're seeing a supply in the order of 230 volts coming up to here. Now that's a good screen supply. It's nice and solid. It's not dependent on anything else. It's got its own independent supply. Much like, I think that we could safely call this little 6v6 working in an ultralinear zone. Now I have two FNT 220 at 300, so they'll go in there. I do have a 100 at 350, which can go in there. I'm hoping that that will fit, because it's a bit thicker than the IC one. If it won't, then I'll put in this MOD brand, which I really like as well, and it's a bit thinner. But so I'll put these two in first and then see what sort of space I've got for that one. Before you go happily pulling out components, just make yourself a little mud map so you know where everything goes back, or else you're going to spend unnecessary time going back through the schematic and tracing it out. These are going to go. I now know where that's going and where that's going. And that's going to be a pain in the ass to get back. And that's there, and that's there. That's that yellow wire we were looking at before. For big solder blobs, I prefer to use this than my desoldering extracting thing machine, because it'll just block up so fast with this quantity of solder. Whereas this thing I can happily suck away. Voila. Good, das ist gut. I just added that, so I'll remember where it goes, because I have the memory of a fish. In fact, I don't remember ever having a good memory. Okay. Now I just want to get some heat shrink on that. Now, what colours do I have that look like orange? I'm going to think yellow is going to look more orange. Alrighty. Well, I am much happier about that. I just don't know how close to the line we came on that one. Alright, let's just have a look at the main filter caps. So I pulled out those IC branded ones. I put in 2 F&Ts here. Try as I might, I couldn't get my F&T in here. So I've given it a bit of a beauty spot and put in the MOD, another excellent quality cap. It would have not been nice to have the full set, but I couldn't have done it without removing these, and I don't think I've got enough lead length, so I would have been billing the customer for 3 more perfectly good F&Ts. So it's not viewed by most people, but that's the reason why we've got that beauty spot of the MOD in the middle. Repaired that burned lead there, that yellow lead, that's fine. Tried to get all the leads as straight as I could given the length that the previous tech had given me, which was not a lot. So I would normally like to try and bend that at a right angle like my MOD lead that I've done there. So I think it's a pretty good job. I'm happy with that. And they're much better quality caps, so I now know that these are going to last for a long time, and when they do eventually get checked again, the future tech will know when I did this replacement. This earth point here is very important, so I just want to improve its security, and a sheet metal screw is just not enough. So I'm going to drill it out. I would like to have soldered that in, but they just haven't left me enough lead length. The earth wire would be pulled up tight. So we'll do a proper nut and bolt, and I'll just grind away a little bit of that so we've got a good earth connection. I've just enlarged that hole a tiny, tiny bit, and I'm just going to grind away a little bit of that coating off there. I want maximum metal-to-metal contact. So I'll just do this while I remember. Good. I think that'll do. So we've now got good metal contact. Like when I'm trying to get nuts on around transformers and stuff like that, quite often use just a bit of blue tack on the nut. Just like that. Now I have a much better metal-to-metal contact, and than we do with the sheet metal screw. And to make sure that we don't get any oxidation around there, and this will never come loose because it's got that nylock nut washer, but a little bit of extra help from some clear nail polish will help. I just want to get that around there as well so we keep the air out of that lug to chassis connection, because I've removed a little bit of that protective coating to get a better contact. Next thing, I'm going to replace these obviously heat stressed 470 ohm resistors with these 470, 5%, 3 watters, mental blank, can't remember the brand of them, but they're really good resistors. In addition to my electric powered desoldering tool, which I usually save for PCBs, the old turret and eyelet boards just got too much solder on most of those connections, and that'll just clog up my machine. I'll be forever cleaning it. And for those, good big removal desoldering tool is this manual pump one. It's got a nice big chamber, and we get quite a lot of suction. For finer work, I really like this one. It's Japanese. I really like this tip. It's sort of got like a silicon tip on it, and it forms a bit of a seal around what you're trying to desolder. So if you have good access to that solder joint, this is also a good one. Great because you can do it all single-handed. Not so great because it doesn't have as big a volume as the blue one. And of course there's the old faithful wick, which I usually use like if I'm trying to access a difficult solder pad, maybe under a PCB where you're only just lifting it up, then the solder wick is good for that. But I usually find I probably use these half the time, 3/4 of the time, and then my powered solder sucker the rest. So what are we going to use for these? Now they've got a bit of a loop around there, so I'm not sure how we're going to go. So how about I just snip him off. And I'll leave a bit of leg there to grab onto. We always like to grab onto a bit of leg. Well, that was a bit more of a pain in the ass than what I was expecting. It's better. Good. So what we're going to do is we're going to, instead of having that screen grid resistor over the valve where it's just going to get hot, I want to sort of angle it further away from the tube base. But we still want to have that lettering showing to identify what we've got. Just crimp that over a bit. But not so much that it may touch the control grid on pin 5. Just lift him up a bit there. Perfect. All right. That's what I like to see. So much higher spec resistor for this higher power application. And I'll do this one, but it's just going to be a repeat of that one with probably a few more swear words because we've got more wires hanging around. This screen grid resistor came out easier than that one actually, even though this one's more crowded. And I put in the new wire wound 475 watt, 3 watt rather. Notice the label is facing towards Future Tech, and they're folded a little bit back so that they're not copying any direct heat. Because I'm uber nerdy, I've even got the lettering facing in the same direction instead of the other way around. Now I just want to check these flyback diodes. These have a protective role. You see them sometimes mounted directly on the tube pin bases like this from the plate to ground. I'm using my Fluke this time because sometimes these 3 kV diodes can fool my benchtop meter into reading open circuit, but that's because they have a higher forward voltage than the standard, like 0.6 volts. So let's just check this one. This is the forward one. Okay, yeah, see, look, it's 1.12 that way, and we should read open this way. Correct, so that one's all right. This one should read open. Correct. And probably the same 1.1 volts this way if it's good. Oh, what's that telling me? Okay, and that's also good. That beep was probably the output transformer because that's now tied to the output transformer. All right, so those flyback diodes are also okay. Here is another indication that the person who worked on this before didn't really know what they were doing. So either they just accidentally replaced a 6V6 with a 6L6, or they just did it out of ignorance, because here, this would be the biasing resistor for the Reverb Driver, which is just here. And it's a 330 ohm resistor. Third bias, there it is, 330 ohm 5-watt resistor. It's the original resistor. So the 6L6 would have just been running at totally the wrong bias. I will test all of these little bypass caps now. I may end up changing the bias resistor and its bypass cap, so I'm not going to touch those right now. But let's have a look at the other little cathode bypass caps. On my ECR meter, LCR meter, I'm going to select 400 Hertz because we do 100 Hertz on the filter caps, but where your LCR meter and you're trying to measure equivalent series resistors, do it at a level, at a frequency level that is close to where these would be used. So for me, that's 400 Hertz, which will be, I don't know, I'm guessing say A flat or something like that on the high E string, like around about the 4th fret. Here's a Nichicon. Have I got that set up right now? Yes, I do. Here's a Nichicon. I would expect this one to be okay. Should be 2.2 microfarad at 50 volts. Should be around about 4. What do we got there? 4.8. That's near enough. Okay, so that one's okay. And here we should be seeing something around about 1 ohm. 20.3 microfarad. 2.6. You're gone. That's 100 microfarad at 100 volts. Be wanting to see something about 0.3, 0.5. It's reading 97.2 microfarad, that's fine, and 0.35. So that one, believe it or not, even though it's jammed hard up against a resistor which should be getting hot, is actually okay. 19.3 microfarad on a 22 mic, so that's in spec, but we should be seeing an ESR of around about 1. We've got an ESR of 3.2. So, you are also gone. 20.5 microfarad and 2.6 ohms. Also gone. See, on the old Fenders, some of these cathode bypass caps are still fine after 50 years. But in this case, niet. Oh, I missed this fella here. He is going to the screen. Oh, that's right. This was almost an ultralinear type of thing where we got a separate tap for the screen grid of the 6V6 Reverb Driver. And this is being filtered by a 4.7 at 450. I would have thought we could have gone a bit higher on that. In fact, if I need to change it, I'm going to go up in capacitance. Hang on, I need to change the frequency on this. 400, 200, 120, 100 Hertz. We should be seeing less than 10. Whack. It is a long way out. It's reading 7.5 microfarad with an ESR of 176. So that fella is dead as a dodo. I'm going to replace that, and I'm going to replace it with a bigger capacitance value as well. I've replaced these cathode bypass caps with MODs. Here I've replaced this one. This Nichicon measured fine, so that's staying. This one I'll come back to once I've got the Reverb Driver transformer in stock. I upped this capacitor here, and this is the screen grid power supply. I could see no reason why it would be a meager 4.7 microfarad. I could have gone more. I was contemplating 16, but I thought, nah, we'll double it. So I put in an 8 microfarad MOD. Right, now I'm going to check the two power tubes, and when an amp is reported to sound bad, quite often a cause is the power tubes. They may, one may be not working, in which case one side is trying to carry the whole load on itself. That's obviously going to sound like shit. Another case may be that they've just drifted apart. They may have been, you know, well matched at the start of their relationship, but tubes drift apart over time. And I'm thinking that this one here, I'm just looking at the plate current, and we want to see a healthy range between 12 and 40. This is 11.8. The other one's 13.4. Well, that's no poster boy for tubes. Quite weak still, but still within an acceptable range. But the other one will have to go, in which case probably both will go. Generally, you cannot get away with replacing one tube. All right, let's check the transconductance, which is basically a measure of gain, almost. It's not quite gain. Gain is when you're comparing voltage to voltage or current to current. With transconductance, we're comparing current to voltage. So we want to see a healthy range of over 2.2, and this one is 2.48. So we're now going to apply power to it for the first time since doing all of this work. And I've got my power plugged into my current limiter. I've got my 8 ohm workshop speaker plugged into the speaker outlet, and remember it's expecting about 3 ohms. It's going to be getting more than twice that, but that'll be fine. We're not going to be playing anything through it, certainly not going to be playing anything loud through it. I just want to see that nothing too extreme happens. When I turn the power on, I expect that we'll see a bit of a glow here as we're energizing the transformer. And then as I hit the standby switch, I'd expect there'll be a second glow as we charge up those big filter caps through a solid state rectifier. All right, here we go. Perfect. That's our transformer energized. Let's do our standby. Expect another bright glow. Great. I'm very happy with that. I can hear a hum out of my, a good hum out of my workshop speaker. Also good. I'm going to put this back into standby. I'm now confident that we can put this in full current mode. And you'll now be able to see the actual current draw in my little ammeter there. And it's currently saying about just under 0.6 of an amp. Right, put the standby back into play mode, and that should go back up again. Great. And now it's settled into about, not quite 0.7 of an amp, 700 milliamps, which sounds very healthy. Now we know we're not going to have any reverb for 3 reasons. 1, the reverb transformer's blown. 2, I don't have a reverb driver tube in place. And 3, there's no reverb tank connected. If you've seen some of my other videos, I often put in, well not often, I always put in a dummy load in place of the reverb tank on a Reverb Transformer, because this is, after all, just a single-ended amp. In fact, if you put a little speaker there, you would hear your sound coming through there. In this case it won't, because that's blown, and I'm not going to worry about putting a dummy load on, A, because it's blown, B, I don't have that valve in there, so it's not drawing any voltage, any current, sorry. There'll probably still be voltage on that red lead. Yes, it does, 467 volts. Alright, I just want to plug the guitar in and just see if we're getting any signal through there at all. Okay. Okay, well the tone is very effective. There's bass, let's try the mids. I can't see any reason why what we did has improved the tone. That was the fat switch. Where is the fat switch? Is it just doing a cathode bypass? Fat. Aha, there it is. So yeah, it's just switching in or out a cathode bypass cap. There's 22 here. So we need to check the cleanliness of these two jacks, especially the return jack. Check if any of these tubes are microphonic. It's not loud enough that the guitar's about to feed back. Nothing there. Nothing there. I'm not sure if you can hear that. That tube there, which is tube 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is coming in. So this tube's very microphonic, and that's picking up the signal from the return jack. And our signal, in fact, goes through here. V5. I can tell by the linked cathodes that that's going to be our phase inverter, and that's quiet. And I can tell V6 here, the only one left, is going to be the oscillator. Where are we? There we go. And these are the three little phase shifting capacitors which sets up the oscillation. I wonder if that tremolo is working, the intensity. Volume. It is working, and there's the dreaded tick. So I can put a capacitor in there to suppress the tick, but because we've got its backside exposed here, I'm thinking we'd probably be serving the owner better if we replaced it. You can even see the flashing there. That's supposed to be fully enclosed, as you'll see in the replacement one. Here's our send return jacks, cotton bud. Will this do any good? What do you reckon? This is just the earth sleeve I'm cleaning there at the moment. Flip it over and do that hot contact there. There's the return jack. You can tell the difference between the return and the send jack. The return jack has got that leaf connection there, and that has to be a good solid connection. And I think it is connecting. But hey, nothing to get excited about. We're going to see if we can retension that. So this is my filed down nail file with a bit of isopropyl on it. And I've smoothed the actual abrading side, so I don't want to take too much material off, just want to basically abrade. So that's, I don't know if you can see that, but that's pretty much smooth. Now I just want to make sure that's making a good contact. So there's a little screwdriver, this will do. Put that there. At the lower part of that leaf. And then I'm going to just bend that in at the top part. That's a much better contact. You can see that centre leaf moving now. Yep, I'm happy with that. Oh, I also did the optocoupler, the roach. Let's try this again. I want to see if we've cured the tick tick ticking sound. I don't think I need to slow down that tremolo. I think that's got a good range on it. Beautiful. I don't think there's a negative feedback loop on this. Normally you'd see, well, for most Fenders, you'd see a negative feedback connection going from the speaker jack back to the phase inverter. Haven't got it. I quite like it without a negative feedback. The little amp I made for Artist guitars, the TweedTone 12A, in that one you can switch the negative feedback in or out. And I quite like it with it out. It makes the sound of the amp a little bit looser, but also makes it much more responsive, touch responsive. Quite like it. We have done what we can do on the VibroKing, so we're now going to wait for the arrival of the Reverb Transformer, and I'm going to talk to the owner about the power tubes. I'll recommend that we replace those because that one is below minimum spec and that one's knocking on the door of minimum spec. So I think after doing all this other work, I think we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't replace them as well. All right, I'll see you in part 2.